Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, one and everyone. I welcome you all on the second day of the two-day web lecture series organized by the Department of English, Government General Degree College, Shalboni. We have with us Professor Sukhendu Das, and it is my privilege and honor to introduce Professor Das formally. Professor Das teaches in the Department of English, Bankura University. He is pursuing PhD on Patrick White. He has also visited University of Wollongong, Australia in the capacity of visiting doctoral fellow. His research interests include exploration history of Australia, critical theory, gerontology, Anthropocene, transnationalism. His two forthcoming books from Cambridge Scholars Publishing include Reimagining Yeats, Contestations and Negotiations, and Shakespeare and the Cultural Politics of Gerontology. Over to you, Professor Das.
Thank you, Professor Sumita Mondal, for your generous introduction. And I would, good morning, everybody. And I would like to express my... Yes. I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Somnita De Mondal, Professor Onik Samanto, Professor Sudeep Khan, who is my mentor and also elder brother, and also Honorable TIC sir. So, as I have promised, I would talk on the Anthropocene and the planetary crisis. So, I'm going to just begin my lecture with what I'm going to do, just sort of abstract of my lecture. In the Anthropocene, yes, am I visible and audible to you all?
Yes, Sukhendu, you are perfectly audible and visible.
Yes, if you have any issue, kindly, write on the chat box.
Okay.
So, in the Anthropocene, humans have become a geological agent of this planet. It signals the end of the social-only understanding of human agency and condition. This post-human condition calls into question and concomitantly destabilizes the conceptions of human agency, autonomy, freedom, and reflexivity that are considered to be the pillars of modernity since the Enlightenment. Anthropocene offers a new lens through which humanistic narratives and philosophical questions are being interrogated, critiqued, and rewritten. Now, let me begin with a sort of footnote to the term Anthropocene. What is Anthropocene? Actually, this is a kind of background to my to my original lecture. Because I know
Sukhendu is having network issues. He will join very shortly. Please bear with us. He will join shortly. He is having some network issues. Yes.
Please turn on your mic, Sukhendu. Turn on your
Sukhendu,
mic. Turn on your mic.
Working. Yes, yes. Am I audible now, Sudhir?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, this is a kind of footnote. So, what is Anthropocene? I know some of you might not be aware of this. New phenomena, which is not actually new. Anthropocene actually comes. It's a portmanteau or the combination of two words. One is anthropo. You can fairly understand. It comes from the Greek word anthropos, which meaning human, which means human, and the prefix, suffix sin, cene. Sin actually comes from the Greek word kainos, right, which means new or recent. So, taking all these components together, it means the age of human, or rather, the new human. Holocene, the present era we are living in is called, the Holocene, right? Which began, let's say, some 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, and which stabilized 10,000 years ago at a global temperature that, with small variation, persisted until humans begin changing the global climate. Uh, drastically. Now, this section I shall be dealing with. Its starting date, which once again there has been much disagreement and less agreement on its starting date. Many critics argue that that the end of the 18th century, right? Paul Crutzen, he got Nobel Prize in 2000. In 2000, for his groundbreaking research and climate science. He was a climatologist or rather a meteorologist, and Paul Crutzen and his colleagues argue that that at the end of the 18th century, which actually is coterminous with the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and also the design of steam engine in 1784. So they are taking this date as the starting point of the Anthropocene, right? But there is another group. This group actually claims that it started with the invention and development of agriculture. Let's say of about 7,000 years ago, right? Although the evidence suggests that human impact, right, was not, enough to destabilize the Earth system until humans began burning fossil fuels in large quantities. So this is another, set of opinion. And more recently, opinion seems to be converging on this date, on this particular date, which is 1945. Now the question is, why is 1945? Because it is considered to be the onset of Great Acceleration. Great Acceleration means, it's a post-World War time, you can fairly understand, and it also, this era is marked by, rather the beginning of, unprecedented growth in human interaction and human development and technological progress. And also this time actually coincides again with the invention of atomic bomb or rather nuclear energy, right? Whose impact on Earth is ambiguous. That year is also the one in which the layer of radionuclides, right? Small, very small, radioactive particles was spread over the Earth's surface. A layer that will act like a flashing light for geologists of the future, right? So these are the possible dates. Once again, you can fairly understand that none of them are able to come to a common starting point. So there is much disagreement. Okay, so and there is three working definitions. how I mean the beginning of a particular epoch is determined. It gets determined by three factors. The first is geological. Geologists, what they do, they actually study on hard evidence, and this hard evidence will be found in sediments and rocks, right? They study on the rocks. Okay, they take carbon testing, right? They run carbon testing and other methods of experiments, and then they officially ratify the beginning of an epoch, or rather an interval of geological epoch. So this is a geological definition. And there is earth system science. So earth system science, it is an assemblage of many disciplinary insights. For example, global ecology, atmospheric chemistry, geochemistry, climatology, oceanography, geology, and there are many more. They share a complex systems perspective on the earth. With this wider lens, earth system science claims that earth is a system. Earth as a system is experiencing a shift. So what I have noticed that this Anthropocene working group relies more on this earth system science. They think that our planet is currently experiencing a shift.
Sir, 1 minute.
Yes.
30-minute anthropology.
Yes, please mute your microphone. I will take all your questions.
Okay.
So experience a shift, leaving behind its Holocene state, right? We are living in the Holocene age, but there are some experts, climate scientists, meteorologists, they argue that we are no longer living in the Holocene because Holocene is marked by an exceptionally stable temperature, the sea level, and also the stable planet, the climate in the planet, right? So, but this is now changing very rapidly, right? So the Holocene is characterized by several millennia of exceptionally stable temperatures and sea levels to enter a new Anthropocene state with far-reaching impacts. Okay, so and the third one is which is called the cumulative impact of civilization. So Anthropocene means the age of humans, how human activity collectively changes the functioning of this planet. So therefore the impact of civilization is very essential. How the Anthropocene describes an event, and describes an even wider notion of human impact on the climate, on the planet, including transformation of the landscape, right? Sprawling urbanization, species extinction, resource extraction, and waste dumping, as well as disruption to natural sources such as nitrogen cycles. Now I'm coming to my main lecture. Now let me begin with a fundamental question, and the question is this: who is the Anthropos in the Anthropocene? That means, who is a human being in the Anthropocene? In the Anthropocene, humans can no longer be considered a biological agent of this planet. Humans have rather become a geological agent. That means a telluric force of this planet, which means human activities collectively, or what I have said, cumulative impact of civilization, are tangibly changing the functioning of the Earth system. History perhaps never witnessed this epic confrontation between humans and Earth system before. This massive transformation has many implications. The idea that nature is a passive backdrop to the drama of human affairs and activities is to be discarded. The social only understanding of human agency and condition is to be rethought. And this actually signals the ushering of post-human condition, which I'll discuss later. Economy, politics, government, history, culture, and society can no longer be seen as purely intra-human contracts and conflicts. That means not about among and between human contracts and conflicts. Our understanding of them should be rematerialized. Modernity's building blocks. Which are the building blocks? Agency, autonomy, freedom, reflexivity can no longer stand on their own grounds. Clive Hamilton argues that, I quote him, in the Anthropocene, social, cultural, and political orders are often into and co-evolve with techno-natural orders of specific matter and energy flow metabolism at a global level, requiring new concepts and methods in the humanities. Unquote. Humanities and social sciences require a radical restructuring of their own disciplinary configuration. So this is the central, argument of my lecture, that humanities and social sciences require a radical restructuring of their own disciplinary practices and of their own disciplinary configurations. Now, let me begin with another fundamental question. These questions seem to be very fundamental, but these questions are not fundamental at all. The way we previously thought to be. What does it mean to be human in the Anthropocene? Right? So Anthropocene, the Anthropocene thesis is going to address this question, right? And the question is this: what does it mean to be human, right? Because we have already noted, the agentive transformation from biological agent to geophysical force. So if the human agency is altered, then the traditional practices in the disciplines of history, philosophy, political science, those are humanistic conceptions. The old humanistic conceptions are to be discarded, right? And therefore, these disciplines require a radical restructuring. Now, let me begin with Socrates' prodigious statement. You all know thyself. Actually, this has a strong rhetorical power, this statement. What does it mean? In the Anthropocene, it means humans should be aware of their limitations. That means that time has reached when we should rethink the human stewardship of the earth, right? We are no longer the custodians of the earth. We don't have no longer the stewardship of the earth, right, of this planet. Human existence is hubris, leading the planet to unprecedented crisis. Humans cannot be and should not be the measure of all things. This is the cardinal point, that humans cannot be and should not be the measure of all things. That means, therefore, Anthropocene encourages us to think about what we are in the process of becoming. That means our old subjectivity, the formation, the traditional formation of our subjectivity is to be reconfigured. Therefore, what we are in the process of becoming, right? And also, this idea, actually, Anthropocene discards the idea, or rather displaces the idea of anthropomorphism, right? So it actually also signals inhumanity of contemporary capitalist geopolitics and biotechnologies of control, right? Now, I would in this next section of my lecture, I would like to talk about this nature-culture ontological divide. What is this divide? Jules Michel, one of the founders of history as a discipline, argues that history is a record of man's crime against nature. Discourses of modernity have pictured nature, with N in caps, existing in an antithetical relationship with society. So nature society is something that is posited against, nature, right? And does not have telos in its history. So nature does not have any telos. That means it is not teleologically programmed. It is not heading towards it, right? But society is teleologically programmed towards freedom. Now, with the adoption of Anthropocene thesis, right? So I won't be talking. I am not interested in its, geological implications. Rather, I'm interested in how this thesis actually makes us rethink our traditional disciplinary configurations, our subjectivity, our governance, our history, right? Our political affairs and also international affairs, right? We have to accept deep. Okay, so I'm lost somewhere. Yes, and now with the adoption of Anthropocene thesis, the division is no longer tenable, right? So what we have seen that nature is a passive background, right? Passive background to the drama of human affairs, right? So this idea, that means there that the industrial modernity, or the Enlightenment modernity depends on this ontological divide, right, between nature and culture, right? And I hope you are aware of it. So we have to accept the deep interconnectedness of human history and planetary history. Bruno Latour, that it would be more profitable to think in terms of geostories or Dulu's becoming Earth rather than purely Earth system. Excuse me. Yes. Yes. Okay. So now this raises a number of thought-provoking questions. The first question: if humans become geological agents of this planet, does it signal the end of nature and everything is turning into an assemble of Earth society, a techno-natural cyborg? First question. And the second question is this: does it signal a new tendency of capitalism, where ontologies are marked by a shift from entities to relations? Now, since the end of nature, the death of nature comes, I would like to talk about this book. The title of the book is After Nature, a Politics for the Anthropocene. It is written by GGDC, Harvard University Press, 2015. In this book, Professor Prudy talks about four concepts. First of all, death of nature. What does it mean? Nature does not exist without human intervention. Number one. Number two, he actually peons for environmental imagination. So what is environmental imagination? How humans have seen, valued, and imagined nature, and what happens when it gets endangered. Number three, political, economical, and ecological vectors are integral to our environmental imagination. Number four, this actually signals a profound vision of post-humanist ethics. Now, I would talk about the convergence of history, how the discipline of the history as a discipline should be reconfigured. How Deepesh Chakraborty, one of the first historians who has been working on this, phenomena, Anthropocene, this issue. Deepesh Chakraborty, in his thought-provoking article, "The Climate of History," fourth thesis, it was published in 2009, was one of the first historians to argue the need for a radical reconfiguration of historiography. Professor Chakraborty thinks that we keep two calendars, geological calendars and human calendars, separate in our thinking. So when we talk about the history of civilization, what we do, we normally we normally discuss, or rather we normally we don't foreground the history of this planet. Rather we focus on, rather human calendar. Here calendar means, I have taken it in a, loosely equivalent to, chronology, right? So we focus on the events of human events. So nature is not considered, in that way. So, but in the wake of the Anthropocene, the separate entities of these two calendars is no longer tenable. Chakraborty argues, I quote him, scholars who study human beings in relation to the crisis of climate change and other ecological problems emerging on a world scale make a distinction between the recorded history of human beings and the deep history. Recorded history refers very broadly to the 10,000 years that have passed since the invention of agriculture, and more usually to the last 400 years or so for such written records exist. Historians of modernity and early modernity usually move in the archives of the last 400 years. The history of humans that goes beyond these written years of written records constitutes what other students of human pasts, not professional historians, we call deep history. So deep history and human history are coming into convergence, right? And I would in the next section I would like to talk about how the philosophy, the philosophy as a discipline, it is also to be reconfigured. How the agentic transformation of humans makes us rethink the humanist conception of human being. So what is the humanist conception of human being? You all know it. Even humans are rational animals, okay, autonomy seeking creatures, and what Kant calls purposiveness, and with a world making, they are essentially world making creatures. Clive Hamilton argues that modernity's project of progressive self-liberation, unaffected by the constraints of nature, can no longer be supported or justified. Anthropocene thesis calls for a radical reconceptualization of freedom. So what does freedom mean in the Anthropocene? It is to be noted that any massive paradigm shift in philosophy is constructed on new ontology, new conception of the nature of being. Now, Peter Sloterdijk is, he has worked. He's a, very influential philosopher. He has worked on, on the idea of cynical reason, and also worked on spheres. Worked on, also worked on space, right? So Sloterdijk rejects a Cartesian dualism. This Cartesian dualism, what is this dualism? Subject and object, nature versus culture, right? And calls for an ontological constitution. This is very important. What is this ontological constitution? This ontological constitution seeks to include all beings. Rather, he is discarding the practices of Enlightenment modernity, right? Where where this ontological division between nature, culture, subject, and object are given priority. They are given priorities, right? So ontological constitution seeks to include all beings, humans, animals, plants, and also machines, right? The collision of human history and planetary history. So when human history and planetary history collides, right? It results in the emergence of new entities, right? But it would be premature to speculate its nature at this stage. So we can't speculate its nature, what kind of entity it is going to be, correct? Okay. So Sloterdijk has published 3 books, which is called Spheres Trilogy. The first one is Bubbles, subtitle is Spheres. It was published in it is also called Microspherology, right? It was published in 1998. The second volume is Globes, which is subtitled Fierce Volume 2, which is called Macrospherology, which was published in 1990, and the third volume. We shall be dealing with the third volume, Holmes, Spheres volume, which is called Plural Spherology. So you can fairly understand that he is talking about the ontological constitution, this kind of, the spaces of coexistence. Rather, so it was published in 2004, deals with spaces of coexistence that would engage with contemporary hyper-complexities to embrace wider horizon at once ecological and global. Humans must engage with monstrousness of the external. Now, since the question of monstrosity comes, I would like to refer to a book edited by Michael Sellenberger and Ted Norris. The title of the book is "Love Your Monsters." It has a very interesting title. "Love Your Monsters." One second, please. Yes. So, "Love Your Monsters," and the subtitle is very interesting: "Post-Environmentalism and the Anthropocene," published in 2011. This volume includes a paper, an article by Bruno Latour. The title of the article is "Love Your Monsters: Why We Must Care for Our Technologies as We Do Our Children." Right? This is Bruno Latour's article. Latour argues, you all know the Frankenstein myth, I'm sure. He's actually giving, reinterpretation of the Frankenstein myth. Latour argues, I quote him, "Frankenstein lives on the popular imagination as cautionary tale against technology. We use the monster as an all-purpose modifier to denote technological crimes against nature." So this is the common, practice in, while we interpret the text. Dr. Frankenstein's crime was not that he invented a creature through some combination of hubris and high technology. This is very important. So his crime was not that he invented a creature, but rather he abandoned the creature to itself. That means Dr. Frankenstein did not take or does not take care of his own creation, right? But our sin is not that we have created technologies, but that we fail to love and care for them, right? We have created technologies and which help to, achieve this unprecedented growth and progress in human civilization. But the fact is that we have failed to love and care for them. Let Dr. Frankenstein's sin serve as a parable for political ecology. Now, I'll be talking about Anthropocene politics, right? How politics, this once again, the disciplinary practice in political science and also international affairs is to be rethought. And I will also show how the earth becomes a political subject. Okay, it's no longer a, background to the passive background to the, intense drama of human activities, rather. So political affairs were thought all about purely intra-human contracts and conflicts. So it was previously thought it is among and between human contracts and conflicts. The Anthropocene thesis makes us rethink the pre-existing political agency and democratic governance. The distinction between objectivist politics of science and economy and the subjectivist politics of culture and identity is getting blurred and exhausted. Timothy Mitchell's book, Carbon Democracy, published in 2011, which is a very influential book, denounces the denatured politics of the 20th century. Denatured, right? That means green element is absent in our political activities or in our political discourses. Timothy Mitchell raised several points in the book. Mitchell argues that the democratic political order depends on cheap fossil fuel. So for a democracy to thrive, it should and must depend on cheap fossil fuel, right? So when a democratically elected government comes to power, right, it gives huge promise to its citizens, to its subjects, right? And to fulfill that goal, the state should depend on cheap fossil fuel, right? And by default, pollute the nature or emit greenhouse gases, right? By default emits carbon and other greenhouse gases. Because of the question is why do the governments across the globe fail to take any decisive action? Why? Because if you closely notice the electoral cycle, across the globe, mostly it runs for, any elected government stays in power until next election for, let's say, for 4 years and for 4 to 5 years. Now, if a government takes any decisive action to protect its environment, rather, that government is not sure whether the next government who will come to power will, carry forward this, policy. Yes. So this is how Timothy Mitchell actually criticizes our democratic politics, right? Okay. So this parliamentary democracy, Gandhi was an utopian critic of it, and in a different sense, but also Timothy Mitchell also, salient critic of parliamentary democracy because it fails to take any decisive action, and at the same time there are several, peer pressures and lobby pressures from, businessmen, from political leaders. Okay, so you are experiencing all these, events happening across the globe, right? And also Adani Group, they have started mining and have already mined many areas in our country, and also destroyed natural resources, and also they are doing the same thing in Australia and in other countries. Okay, so also they faced, huge resistance, right? So because of the short nature of electoral cycles, an elected government fails to take any decision to harness greenhouse culture, which requires a planning for next 2 or 3 decades, maybe 5 decades. So electoral cycles are very short tenure, but to take any decisive action that would really cure, that would really harness, this reckless, anthropogenic, climate change. Okay, it should be implemented for next 30 years or 50 years, right? So no government is going to, take up the issue. So this exposes the limitations of parliamentary democracy in the Anthropocene. Anthropocene thesis refuses to recognize the environment as a struggle among humans about nature. The emerging green political theory in recent years has considered to include nature in its conceptual construction. This is very important. So politics is no longer, intrahuman is no longer an intrahuman, contract and conflict. Rather, this green element should be, incorporated in its conceptual construction. Since we can't undo progress, so many of us will be offering a very utopian idea. So what happens if we don't use, vehicles that pollute nature? If we don't use jet planes, and also other, transport, means which actually depends on fossil fuel. But the thing is that the progress we have made so far, it cannot be undone. Okay, so since we cannot undo progress and development, we have to rethink governance in terms of geopolitics. Okay, geopolitics would no longer deal with humans' relation of power over land and natural resources. It rather considers Earth as a political subject, which signals a new era for geopolitics. Since the anthropogenic climate crisis become a cross-boundary, or rather transnational problem, no superpower can alone solve it. So you can't, raise high wall to protect your country from pollution, right? From protect, you can protect it no longer. So thus environment slowly crept into international relations and calls for global collaboration. Environment issues gets mixed up with other global problems, trade deals, refugee crisis, exigencies of the Cold War. And Deepesh Chakraborty, Slavesh Zizek, and Naomi Klein, they all argue that climate crises have been fueled by capitalism. So there are many left-wing intellectuals, and most of them, agree on this particular point that it is fueled by capitalism. Capitalism is the culprit. Slavesh Zizek concludes in his, in his book, Living in the End Times. Zizek argues, I quote him, one can solve the universal problem of the survival of human species only by first solving the particular deadlock of the capitalist mode of production. The key to the technological crisis does not reside in ecology as such. Once again, like Deepesh Chakraborty, he is also pointing to this phenomenon that the problem to solve the problem of capitalism, to solve the problem of anthropogenic climate crisis, okay, we have to first solve the problem of capitalism. Naomi Klein, in her books, The Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism, published in 2008, this changes everything. This is a very influential book. Capitalism versus the climate. Right, so this changes everything. This single phenomenon, she is pointing to the capitalist practices, locates capitalism as the singular phenomenon responsible for the global environmental crisis. Now, I shall be talking about the humanities. How humanities and also literature, literature can deal with, or rather deal with this unprecedented crisis. Cultural texts constitute of complex network of ideas, politics, history, practices of everyday life, social rituals, etc. Interpreting such texts might help humans understand the patterning of the enormous cultural transformations, such as the Anthropocene. Novels written in an era of global environmental crisis, which are loosely termed as cliffy climate fictions, makes us rethink the received literary functions such as setting, character, time, and mode of representations. In his book, Ecology Without Nature, Timothy Morton argues that, it was published in 2007, argues that eco-criticism's dependence on romantic historical notion of nature and literature makes it unfit to engage with the politics of global warming. Yesterday, Owen was asking me the question. So the answer is this: that the eco-criticism's dependence on romantic historical notion of nature and literature makes it unfit to engage with the politics of global warming. Bruno Latour, in his book We Have Never Been Modern, published in 1992, argues that modernity is based on this ontological disjunction between nature and culture, subject and object. Hence, modernity does never help us understand how reality works. Latour argues that nature and society cannot be seen as having antithetical relationships, and this gives an occasion to recognize that we have never really been modern. So this is the title. We have never really been modern because we have made this disjunction between nature and culture. This division makes us think that we have never been modern. He proposes that networks of hybrids. So his network theory, actor network theory, which is very pertinent in very useful in discussing the Anthropocene. Networks of hybrids, that is half subject and half object, known as machines and facts, can mediate between nature and culture. Latour's model of ontological interdependence might help eco-critics to form a methodology of environmental interpretation. cultural texts should explore how things like tectonics, volcanism, viruses, supercyclones, and capital shape human experience and condemn within quote greenhouse culture should engage with this question. Once again, it's an overwhelming question: what it means to live in the Anthropocene. Thank you. This is the end of my lecture. So thank you for your patience. So I would like to have your question and would like to answer them.
Thank you so much, Professor Das, for this enriching lecture. And this session is now open for interactions and observations. I think there is one question in the chat box
Yes.
from Miss Pushpita.
Yes.
Should I read it out?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Pushpita Aradhana Panda, she wants to know the meaning of anthropology.
Anthropology.
Yes.
Yes, anthropology is actually the study of human beings and also their developments, their, societal evolution. So it's a discipline. Okay. So I'm not going to deal with any anthropology, but this is a very basic notion that it's a discipline, okay, which deals with, let's say Amitabh Ghosh was an anthropologist, right? It deals with human society, its evolution. It actually studies human behavior, okay, and the pattern of human behavior. So discipline. So anthropology is actually also takes it insights from many disciplines such as sociology, psychology, and many other disciplines. Okay, so it is an assemblage of many disciplinary insights. Okay.
Any more questions from the participants?
Okay, Sri Oyan, perhaps Oyan has asked a question. Could you please throw some light on the intersection of Anthropocene with literature? Yes, Oyan, I have already discussed it in very brief, so I will elaborate it. Yesterday you have also asked me the same question. Okay, so the question is this. The question is. Throw some light on the intersection of Anthropocene with literature. Okay, so the interface between Anthropocene and literature. So, you know that Anthropocene, with the emergence of Anthropocene, right? What happens is that our agency has changed, right? We are no longer biological agents of this planet, right? And we have become a geophysical force of this planet. And this agentic transformation means a lot. That means since literature addresses humanity, right? Literature addresses human condition, right? So what find that with this, huge paradigm shift from biological agent to geophysical force, yes, the discursive construction of human subjectivity has altered. And we have already entered the era of post-human condition, right? Which I would no longer call human condition, rather post-human condition. And literature should address this particular question: what it means to live in the Anthropocene. Okay, how humanity should cope with this Anthropocenic global warming. Now the problem is that there are many fictions written, dealing with this, anthropogenic global warming and the planetary crisis. But the problem is that, and also problem with many such Hollywood movies, that they actually offer a sort of dystopic ending, right? Dystopic ending that, apocalypse is, coming soon, and the planet is going to be destroyed, right? So I think that they don't offer any such pragmatic solutions to the problem, right? Even in Amitabh Ghosh's last novel, The Gun Island, I am not very happy with the ending, and I have found that many such novels actually they don't know how to deal with the ending. Rather, I'm sure that someone will write a book, The Sense of an Ending, in this anthropogenic, global warming, right? So that's all about. Um, that's all about. I hope I have been able to answer your question, right?
Lily Mondal, Sukhendu Lily Mondal writes, it would be really helpful if a list of books referred by the speaker could be provided. If you can some way help her with the list, Sukhendu.
Lily Mondal, it would be very difficult to, mention all the books. Please drop your email ID here. I will, send you an email and I will mention all the books there, right? Right, Lily Mondal, please, send your email ID. Okay, there are many books. There are many books. List of books, actually, which books? Books on Anthropocene or rather on literature dealing with climate crisis? Please be specific. And Toshif Hassan. Yes, Toshif Hassan has raised a question. What is the future of Cliffy in India? Thanks. Okay, Toshif, I hope you have seen, you have read Amitabh Ghosh's interview. Few months back, Amitabh Ghosh argued that that there is not much climate fictions written in India, right? So actually, this genre is comparatively less explored in India. So I think that, and also I would like to add to this that there are many writers coming up who is actually dealing with the problems. Let's for example, Deepak Dalal, right? Deepak Dalal has written. He's actually his novels are called young adult fictions. He has written books on species extinction, hunting, okay, and also the land transformation, all that. I think that more novels should be written because you know that literature and other cultural texts, as I have already discussed, that they actually play a pivotal role in shaping our consciousness, right? In shaping our consciousness, how we should address the problem and how should we conceive the problem, and also they should inculcate a sort of ethics. The ethics is that we have done enough damage to this planet, and this time we should refrain from doing anything that would be highly detrimental or that would damage the planetary function. That this ethical values should be implanted, right? That does not mean that all the novels should be propagandic in nature. That would be reductive, but in a subtle way, in a very imaginative way, which is therefore the fictions are autonomous in nature. Okay, they shall not necessarily explicitly deal with the problems. Rather, they should tacitly, in a very in a very sophisticated way. Okay, so in a very tacitly should implant this kind of ethical moorings, right? Okay, and there is another question. Okay, Pushpita Aradhana Panda, right? Okay, Pushpita Aradhana Panda, she has written, she has asked a question, what is the difference between ideology and anthropology? Yes, yeah, you know that what is ideology? Ideology is actually a set of beliefs. In a very bottom line proposition, if I am asked to give a bottom line proposition, I would say that it's a set of beliefs, right? Set of beliefs. The way we look and perceive at the world, right? So the ideology is also contingent. It is contingent. It is changing across the ages. Okay, down the ages. Okay, and anthropology. And what is the anthropology? Anthropology, you know that as I have already discussed, it's a discipline, right? It's a discipline. It's a discipline that focuses on the study of human beings, the evolution of human culture, and also human observations, and also their societal norms and everything. I've already discussed those issues. Amit Ghosh, yes, Amit, could you please mention some literary texts where there is reflection of the Anthropocene? Yes, there are many texts. I can tell you Hungry Tide by Amitabh Ghosh, Ian McEwan's Solar. Okay, and there is a book, Anthropocene Fiction, right? Anthropocene Fiction. This book actually deals with many such novels. And also there are many, climate fictions written in, Britain. Okay, so you will find many such books there. Okay, so next question is Subhadeep Mukherjee. Oh my God, it's a very long question. Okay. Sir, Amitabh Ghosh in a recent interview said that that most climate change fictions are set in the future because because the readers are still unable to grasp with the immediacy of the problem. I do agree with you, and also Amitabh Ghosh. Yes, that I had already discussed. In his novel Gun Island, he uses fantastical and mythical elements to represent consequences of climate change. Do you think that realism is not adequate to represent climate change in fiction at the moment? Okay, since it is a product of Western notion of rationality as well. Do you think that realism is not adequate to represent climate change in fiction at the moment, since it is a product of Western notion of rationality as well? Yes, I don't think that. No, my answer is that this novel should be realistic rather than utopian in nature, rather than imaginary in nature, because we have to focus on, the problem, and also how to solve it, how to grapple with the crisis. Uh, in recent time, Ted Nordhaus and Michael Swenberger, they have published a book post environmentalism. So we have already crossed that. Area of environmentalism. We have ushered in post. What should I say? Environmentalism. This post environmentalism. This school or this model of thinking argues that we should not undo progress. Rather, we should not. Rather, we can't go back to our primitive days. Rather, we should think how we can. Condition the temperature of our planet, and how we can geo-engineer. I am using it as a verb. How we can geo-engineer the climate and the function of our planet. So I don't think that realism is not adequate. It is adequate. It is adequate. So they should be realistic. I hope I'm able to answer your question. Riyanka Sharma, yes, you said that most of the speculative fiction, excuse me.
I can read the questions for you, Sukhendu.
Yes.
There's a question from Riyanka Sharma.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, you said that most of the speculative fiction are dystopian or apocalyptic in nature. Is it more affected by the pessimism brought in the climate change? Yes. Answer should be yes. And you know that many such climate fictions and also some Hollywood movies are also responsible for it. They are actually giving a very dark picture and also pessimistic picture that the climate is going to end soon, and this planet will no longer remain habitable to human species. Okay. Saurabh Patra. Is Bible supports anthropocentric perspective that humans are the only things that matter on earth? I think no. So I would be happy to receive more questions, and I would try to address in my own way. Any more question? Somrita?
Any more questions from the audience, from the participants? Okay, I don't think there are any more questions. Okay, another one from Pushpita Aradhana Pradhan.
Yes. Sir, can you? Yes. I will send you. A list of books on Anthropocene and also climate fictions. Okay, because the list is very long, so I think that it would take much time here. So I should not waste the time here. I would rather send you an email, right?
Thank you so much, Sukhendu, for addressing all the questions. Now, may I request my colleague, Professor Onik Samonto, to introduce our next speaker, Professor Debolina Guhothakurta. Over to you, Onikda.
Thank you, Samrita. It is indeed my pleasure and my privilege to welcome our next and final speaker. And God. In my beginning, at the end is my beginning. And this lecture series with Devolina's group. But I hope that we have been able to make and now
Onikda, if I may interrupt, you are not properly audible. Onikda, you are not properly audible.
Okay.
I think Onik is having some network issue.
Audible now?
Audible,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, Onikda, please continue.
But to make this
Onikda, if I may interfere, Onikda, I think you are having some network problem. You are not audible, Onikda. Okay, I can suggest one thing. Can I introduce her on your behalf?
Okay.
If you may allow.
Oh yes, please.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Onikda.
Okay. Okay.